for the recording. Welcome to Kelly from Verve, and looking forward to lots of questions and learning lots of stuff.
Thank
I'll
you.
thank myself.
Thanks, Caroline. Right, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. See if I do this the right way.
Yeah, we can see it.
Going to full screen. Is that all working fine? Good.
Full screen is good, yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, so first of all, thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me here today. I'm very excited to be talking to you all. Bit more background on myself. I have been at Verve for about 2.5, coming up to 3 years now. But prior to being at Verve, I was working heading up the culture and trends team in what was initially Join the Dots that became Insights Consulting and more latterly Human Aids. But lots of experience in taking secondary data sources, combining things like social intelligence with things like semiotics, but also primary qual research with primarily leading edge individuals and experts, but really taking those different lenses and inputs and taking them together to generate insights. Doing similar work at Verve, but what's been really exciting for me more recently is using social intelligence in combination with AI. I'm sure you've heard lots about AI, but we've been really experimenting in this space, and I think I've got something quite exciting to show you, whilst also being quite terrifying perhaps, and certainly inspiring. So without any further ado, I will get cracking. So we call the session Answering Back because I think what this combination of social intelligence and AI enables is a shift from purely listening into asking questions. And again, we'll reveal more as we go through. So, does anyone recognise the movie This Still Is From? I won't ask you to shout out, but I imagine you've got it. It is from Spike Jonze's 2013 movie Her, where Joaquin Phoenix plays Theodore, who falls in love with Samantha, played by Scarlett Johansson, an AI virtual assistant. Now, a decade later, AI chatbots have boomed as life imitates art, and anyone can now have a real conversation with a lifelike human simulation created through generative AI. Now, character AI is at the forefront of this. Platform was launched in November 2021, but really took off from sort of May 2023 when the mobile app made available. Character AI is a neural language model developed by former Google AI experts Noam Shazir and Danielle de Freitas, and it's capable of generating human-like text responses. And this duo bets that people will want to interact with a variety of different chatbot personas rather than having sort of a single all-encompassing AI companion. Character AI already boasts over 20 million users, and the app has become one of the most popular chatbots behind ChatGPT. In fact, it has surpassed ChatGPT in terms of user engagement, hitting an average interaction time on the platform of a whopping 34 minutes versus a paltry 7 minutes for ChatGPT. And quite excitingly, 60% of Character AI's audience belongs to the coveted 18 to 24 years age group. And I guess Character AI's appeal lies in its capacity for creative expression, fan fiction, and role-playing. And there are over 16 million individual characters on Character AI, offering everything from companionship to advice, emotional support, and even romantic love. However, before you all rush ahead, it only allows safe for work content. Others, like Chat FAI, offer not safe for work content for users above 18 if you're interested. And popular Character AI chatbots include those based on people like Taylor Swift, Socrates, Super Mario, and Elon Musk. Some are very, very popular. The most popular one is a psychologist with over 100 million individual chats. And even very obscure ones like a chair get hundreds of thousands of chats. Now, it's this human-like interaction that's compelling. And Character AI users spend an average total of 2 hours daily conversing on the platform. So clearly conversation is key here. So I asked Plato why this is. And this was his response. So as you can see, it's all about conversation as a way to express our feelings and to strengthen bonds with other humans, creating deeper and more meaningful connections, as we all very well know as all researchers. So then why would people enjoy conversing with chatbots? Well, according to Plato, it's because by its very nature, a chatbot is a great listener. It doesn't interrupt people, it makes them feel at ease and opens up avenue of connection for them. Hopefully, like a good core researcher, again, but ensuring privacy maintained so people are very open with them. Now, these chatbots sit on Character AI's own large language model, LLM, and are trained using relevant data sets provided with characteristics relevant to that individual. So Plato is trained on, well, I asked him, he's trained on Aristotle's writings, Plato's dialogues, Neoplatonism, and various kind of other historical sources, which makes sense. So then, by the same token, Roger Taylor, the drummer from Queen, is trained on the entire Queen discography, as well as random bits of trivia and information on the band. And someone like Clara Brooks, who is a wildly popular Gen Z chatbot, was a little bit more evasive when I asked her what she was trained on. But when we probe a little further, we do discover that she's trained on social media. And you notice this in the way she talks when you interact with her. She talks in a very kind of socially kind of Gen Z dialogue. So why am I telling you all this? Well, at Verve, we've been pioneering building Gen AI simulations trained on existing data sets. And we call these Verve intelligent personas. And the personas work across a variety of use cases, whether that's just straightforward retrieving information through to accurately predicting consumer behaviors, attitudes, and needs, using the very same principles of the character AI simulations I just showed you. So we start with unstructured social data, and we scrape this in using platforms such as Brandwatch, if it's more text-based, or other scraping tools for more video-based or image-based content. We bulk download that and feed it into our proprietary machine learning AI to carry out a summarization and clustering exercise to kind of identify clusters of meaning within those large unstructured data sets. And then finally into our Gen AI platform to create our AI models. And here the social data is a training layer that sits on top of the source LLM and the Verve Maven training layers. And using the power of the AI, we're able to synthesize the social data to basically fill in the gaps and generate new forms of insight. And this enables us to get sort of beyond listening from social to actually asking. That all sounds quite vague at the moment, but I'm going to take you through a couple of examples to show how we actually do that and kind of the benefits it brings. So let's look at the first example. This was a proof of concept we did in the space, which used a relatively small sample of social data to build an AI model. In this case, the AI model is of Ninja customers. They of the air fryer fame. Now, I'm sure you're aware that not only do Ninja's air fryers fry, but they also have a competitor to the outdoor grill and barbecue, which is the industry our client works in. And this is called the Woodfire Electric Barbecue Grill and Smoker, as per the image on this slide. It's a great piece of kit, actually. We have one at home. My husband is obsessed with it. Doesn't look quite as clean as that, though. So our client, who's based in the US, had initially been looking to understand the wider cultural conversation around outdoor grilling and barbecuing, because it's an area they operate in and they want to be on top of kind of emerging trends and needs. So we started by doing kind of a traditional pull and scrape of 93,000 pieces of online text-based content from social forums and reviews. So things like Twitter or X posts, Reddit community, subreddit conversations, review sites, and so on. And this was actually across the US, Germany, Australia, and Japan. And first of all, we put those 93,000 pieces of unstructured conversation through our platform to make sense of them, to carry out that clustering exercise. And that analysis itself was interesting. The AI digested and summarized those 90,000 conversations into 25 clusters and themes of meaning. And what's important to note here is that the AI doesn't just cluster based on explicit descriptions. It reads every word and analyzes across hundreds of variables. So things like built in are semiotic and psychographic based frameworks. And what it's able to do is uncover hidden meaning within that language, that text. So we found here like a range of different topics within these 25 clusters. So some clusters were more focused on technical information. So imagine nerds discussing burners. Others were more demonstrative about the best way to cook a steak or the virtues of smoking. But what was interesting is that it identified one topic that was all about Ninja, specifically the Woodfire. And this was different as it purely related to the brand itself. And it demonstrated to our client the brand was starting to create Ninja evangelists amongst outdoor grillers. And this was quite surprising as their outdoor grill and barbecue at this time was relatively new. And it really stood out as its own thing in the outdoor grilling space, driving conversation about itself. Whereas all the other brand mentions, when specific brands were mentioned, were kind of spread across the various clusters, none kind of owning any one individual cluster. And this is very interesting for our client. And they wanted to know more about the Ninja's customers and why they were buying into the brand so enthusiastically. And this is where the Gen AI personas comes in. So here we move from the kind of the machine learning into the Gen AI. The Ninja cluster itself, within that 93,000 posts, was about 4,000 individual posts. And again, the AI could make sense of the information contained within, so it kind of exploded those 4,000 out. And for example, it could map out all the different needs and benefits that the Ninja products offer customers from their social comments and reviews alone, creating some zones of benefits, as you can see on the chart here. And then the really interesting part, it can then take those customer comments and create composite personas purely from those. So the AI looks at the information contained within the cluster and based on the variability within it, identified an optimal number of personas to explain that variation. That is essentially composites of the key stories and narratives from that text. And in this case, it identified 6 personas. It mapped them against their needs and it gave them names and summaries. But what the generative AI then is able to do from that kind of seed data is automatically generate a lot of information about them. So drawing primarily on the data of the cluster to embody the individuals and then using AI to augment with everything from their stories, example quotes from the data, both real quotes and composites, an image generated representing them. It includes descriptions of their homes and where they live, an estimate of market opportunity as a percentage of the cluster, some ideas of what might appeal to each persona to help with innovation and marketing, and even ancillary lifestyle hypotheses and profiles. So even from this relatively small data set of around 4,000 comments from social, the AI provides some powerful thought starters and hypotheses and areas to explore in lots more detail. So why is this useful? Well, on this particular project, we hadn't been intending to deep dive into Ninja, but the data showed that it was an interesting cluster, and that emerged very naturally. And the richness of the social input combined with the Gen AI created incredibly rich outputs. And suddenly, at the click of a button, relatively speaking, our client could dive into this newly emerging competitor. And personas, as we all know, are really helpful to bring segments to life or kind of data sets to life. But manual traditional market research to generate these personas is necessarily quite time intensive and expensive. But here, at the relative click of a button, our client could really start to understand this group. So rather than us going back and saying, well, 5% of the conversation is about Ninja, that could be a challenge for you, we could bring that data to life. And we know that emotional stories work better than facts. And this really helped the business emotionally connect with the customers of this brand. In terms of kind of some challenges, we hadn't actually intended to look at Ninja, so it was a relatively small data source. But for a subsequent project off the back of this, we then went into a bit more detail and we did some qual exploration with these types of people and basically uncovered the same theme, which kind of really helps illustrate the point. And it's really sold this approach into the client who's now kind of doing a lot more in this space with us. The other key benefit of this type of persona approach is that the personas can be made interactive. And we didn't do it on this particular project, but I'm going to show an example of where we did make them interactive. So kind of, again, taking that kind of character AI approach. So let me move on to that. So this was a project looking at Gen Z around fashion, their kind of fashion needs, trends, wants. For this project, our in-house team of trend researchers and cultural analysts at Verve identified a huge set of fashion hashtags and accounts that were trending amongst Gen Z on social media. And we used these hashtags and accounts to pull in thousands of trending images from Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, representing a total view of Gen Z fashion aesthetics today. So all those images were fed into our AI platform, which also reads each individual image using the same set of inbuilt semiotic and psychographic frameworks that I mentioned on the text-based one. It's exactly the same approach. And it, again, identifies naturally occurring clusters of implicit meaning. And this resulted in 8 core clusters, which cut across the vast array of looks and styles that you kind of see online today, to provide an underlying generational understanding of fashion needs and values that drive those trends, and not just the trends themselves, but actually what sits underneath them. So by way of brief example, one of those underlying kind of trends was one we called quaint cuteness. This is where Gen Z at the core are looking to escape from the fast-paced modern life by really romanticizing traditional feminine aesthetics. And you might kind of be familiar with things like at the moment, like the trad wife trends, obviously the Bridgerton, a lot of excitement around that. It's this kind of space where we kind of want to kind of rewind and go back to simpler times. So we kind of built out 8 of these individual clusters into personas, as again, like the ninja example. And we augmented them with wider Gen Z social data and some carefully curated secondary data reports on this generation and kind of trends and lifestyle and so on. A little video from Quaint Cuteness. Not sure if any of you are dressing like that. I'm not. I was actually quite a different cluster than that. I'm also not Gen Z. For this example, we then went a step further and used a chat interface to bring the clusters to life, enabling us to interact with them. And I'm just playing a screen recording for you here, where within the interface, rather than having like a Gen Z individual, we had the 8 different personas, and you can call them up individually, you can ask them questions, you can chat to them, you can get them to respond to each other, almost like a mini focus group. You can get them to respond qualitatively, you can even get them to give scores and directional quant as well. So it really helps you kind of understand the needs, wants of this group of people in relation to fashion specifically. So I'll let that play for a minute. You can start to see the kind of the detail you can get and the richness. Again, very similar to what you've seen on the character AI, but using a different source data set to build up those personas. Okay. We'll move on. So in terms of kind of the benefits and challenges of this kind of example, what is great is that this approach allows for a deeper understanding of Gen Z beyond aesthetics. So often when you're doing trend stuff, you're just reporting on the images you see. This actually gets to by using the inbuilt frameworks in the AI, the psychographic frameworks, you start to underline what's being communicated, the underlying needs, and so on. Through the interface, it provides a means to interact with difficult to reach Gen Zs. We all know they're kind of hard to engage in traditional research, but actually through this, we can now answer questions, quick fire questions, get them to settle arguments, get them to come up with ideas, respond, and so on. They're accessible all times of the day and night. They don't get bored, they don't get tired, they don't need an incentive. You can ask difficult or confidential questions without any kind of concern. They're not going to share any concepts or leak anything back because they are not real people with all their foibles. And they're ideal for innovation and ideas screening and having the final say on arguments. So lots of kind of ways in which you can kind of put them to use for inspiration and ideation. However, there are a couple of challenges with our Gen Z personas. Notably, they can't hear, which is not ideal. So everything is text-based, of course. And also, they do need updating. This particular group will need updating quite quickly as the category moves very fast. And we're actually going through an update process at the moment, which if you follow me, I will kind of be sharing some links to the forthcoming report on that. So you can start to see how you could take a similar process for other hard to reach groups who are sharing or talking online, be that dentists, first time home buyers, data security experts. These are all examples of where we've been looking to kind of generate data from social for kind of conversations and kind of convert them into these interactive personas. So both of the examples I shared there, so the one that was looking at the ninja competitor and the fashion Gen Z examples, are examples where social data has formed the core, if not the only training layer for the intelligent personas. Now, from a wider insight perspective, if we wanted to build kind of fuller, more rounded simulations, then we will also need to build in other data sources too. So, for example, we might want to build a very specific model that simulates and replicates a client's segmentation. Now here we take their existing segmentation data to build the model rather than just purely social data. Now, all these examples might be interesting, they might be terrifying, but essentially what we believe here we're doing is it's very similar to what we've been doing in market research for years. So building market simulation models and using kind of data that we have and kind of extrapolating out from that. And as with any other market research model, the key here is that garbage in, garbage out holds. So when we're looking at social data, there is quite a lot of work to be done in like curating, cleaning, clustering that data set in order to get something useful out the back end. But once the models are built, they can be used for all sorts of purposes. But the key benefit of kind of being able to use data sets beyond social is that we can also use the client's data to validate the models, whereas it's quite hard to validate them on social alone. You kind of have to run like a parallel study. And in fact, we've been able to demonstrate in numerous examples where the AI-generated models can effectively replicate with high accuracy how real people have responded to surveys and other research. Now, this is one for the quanties in the room, not so much my area of expertise, but we have carried out studies where we've compared asking a bunch of concepts to a generic LLM, so ChatGPT, to look at the level of correlation on the scores. And what you see here is that there is some correlation, but it's not great. It's 0.2. And this is because like ChatGPT is kind of programmed to be kind of quite positive on in its responses generally, and kind of give you an answer, generally a positive one. When we compare that to what we're able to achieve with the VIPs using training data, you get to a much kind of a stronger correlation of 0.8. And then finally, we've run more detailed studies where we've done max diff, like in the real world, and then compared it to a max diff we've done with the VIPs, the generated personas, and it got a really high level of correlation at 0.9. So you can start to see what the potential might be for these models to replace, augment, and streamline some traditional forms of market research. I don't believe it's ever going to replace everything, but I think it's an exciting addition to the toolkit. So I guess in terms of kind of bringing that all back together then, AI platforms like Character AI and ChatGPT are changing how we interact with technology, and we expect to see a really big growth in this space. Fundamentally, humans need conversation. Social data will be harnessed to feed simulations. So how can we gather and interpret this conversation, and who should be doing that? And also the social listening will need to evolve. How do we listen to these conversations? Who are we listening to? Is it real people or bots? And then also there's, I guess, a legal challenge regarding some intellectual property rights. As AI becomes more sophisticated, it risks using ideas or characters protected by copyright, such as famous or fictional characters without permission, or individuals even. And it's less of an issue if we're using our own high quality data sets which have rights over, but it's certainly something to consider when we're looking at social data. And then I'm going to give the final comment to a piece of cheese, which is an actual character on Character AI, who has 3.3 million chats, interestingly, whose view is that the future of chatbots is pretty bright, and as time goes on, they'll become even more intelligent and be able to mimic humans even better, which I think poses lots of questions for us. That is all the content I was going to share in terms of presenting, but I'm hopeful we can have a nice chat and ask some questions around what I've just